Hello there. Today, I have the honor of being joined by Tyler from Fantasy Flight Games. Welcome, Tyler.
Hello, friends.
Thanks
It's
for
me.
being here.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. We have
Yeah,
some spicy stuff to talk about.
I think so too. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff today, but I want to give folks just a little background about how we know each other, because
Yeah,
it goes way back in the Wayback Machine. And I haven't even talked about like my old gaming days too much, but I used to play a lot of the Star Wars LCG, right? Great game made by Fantasy Flight Games,
we love it.
and I played at a pretty high level, right? So like I went to all the back then it was called the World Championships and the North American Championships. I only missed one, right? And of all the events that I went to, I was I played pretty well, right? And I made the top 16 in every single tournament that I went to except for one.
Yeah, I was gonna say you are extremely consistent placement.
I never won, but I was always right there.
Me neither.
Do you know who knocked me out of the top cut of the one that I missed?
Um, I have three guesses.
Okay,
It's probably one of these three people. Guess number one, Tom Malucci, because he knocked a lot of people out.
it wasn't
Guess number
Tom.
two, Mick Cipra, because he's my nemesis. And guess number three is it's a leading question, and it was me.
Yeah, it was you. You remember that you knocked?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, yeah. That was great, and ever since then, I think we've been fast friends because it
Yeah,
was a great game. You deserved to win, and you went on to do great things. And yeah, so
I still have my collection over there in my closet,
yeah,
ready to get out at any moment.
mine's 3 feet away.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was then. So this is now. So now you're at FFG,
Here we
and
are, still playing Star Wars card games.
that's right. That's right. It's brought us back together. And you were a designer up until recently when your title changed to creative lead, right?
Yes,
Can you tell us more about that and what exactly a creative lead does?
sure. So prior to my promotion, I was a game designer, which is mostly what you would expect. Game designers are responsible for designing cards, and uh, because we have lots of sets, different designers are assigned to work on different sets at any given time. Although we all like advise each other.
Sure.
Um, So while I was a designer, I worked on obviously the first three sets, and then also set Secrets of Power, which comes out in November. And I did a heavy amount of work on next July's set, or the July 2026. Yeah, July 2026 set.
Okay.
Um, then I was promoted to creative lead. This was largely because I was already doing a lot of the things that have now become the creative lead's responsibility, which
Okay.
is advising on creative decisions related to things like the color pie and character selection, and being sort of an oversight figure on all of the art production that we do, and also interfacing with all of those other departments. Um, and so when the team became big enough that we needed someone to operate in a more uh, specifically leadership capacity, as opposed to just being a designer who does these things also,
Mm-hmm.
um, they promoted me into this position so that, and also so that I could work with Danny more directly.
Mm.
Danny, the lead designer of the whole Star Wars Unlimited game line, has a lot of responsibilities that are only growing as the game grows. And
Sure.
so now the two of us work together as leadership partners for the rest of the designers, and then all the rest of the designers design the actual cards that go in the sets, and then we give feedback and give direction and help make sure that the sets that we're making are aligned with the strategy of what we need for the game to be successful.
That makes sense. So I'm going to give you just use one example, and
Mhm.
I'd be curious about how you would see the roles working, like designer versus creative lead. So let's pretend you're coming up with a new set, right? Set 17 or whatever it is, right? Would the vision for that set start with you? Would it start with Danny? Would it start with like the whole team in a room saying, this is going to be the overall theme of this set? Like, how would that work?
So it's that process is continually evolving.
Okay.
So far, the way it has gone is that the whole team meets once a year, and we have a big sort of deliberation. And in the deliberation, people bring pitches. It could be a fully fledged. I have a set title and all the mechanics and a leader list, and we've got all the details buttoned up. And it could be as little as, hey, it'd be cool if we put this mechanic in a set.
Okay.
And the whole spectrum in between, and we put all of the ideas in a big table, and then, or I guess on the table, the digital table, and then we deliberate about what the needs of the year are, what the objective, what the priorities of the year are. If there are certain things that we're like, okay, this specific mechanic is something we've been really wanting to do, so we're going to definitely put that in a set. And if this is one of the sets, then the next set probably should be this so that it's sufficiently different, or maybe this other thing, because then there can be some cross-set, synergy. And so we do this whole like complicated deliberation, which also involves some amount of like voting on what we like. And then we reach a consensus of the general arc of the year. And almost no specifics are hammered out at this point.
Okay.
Beyond whatever was in the original pitch, because that's going to come on down the line, right? If we have a set coming out in November and a set coming out in March, we're not going to be working on those sets at the same time. The set in November can sit on ice for a while we figure out what's going on in the March set. And so given that, and so within that process, Danny and I are effectively like leaders of the discussion and directors of priority, because we're more intimately involved in what the big picture strategy of the game line is. So we can more effectively pinpoint, okay, these need to be our priorities, and given these priorities, we should target these pitches or these mechanics or whatever. And then the rest of the design team mostly function as a input of ideas and as a massaging of details. And then importantly, they all get assigned out to sets. Danny and I are not, right? So all the sets for 2026 are assigned to specific designers that are not us. So while we might direct the like big picture arc of the year and prioritize or identify the priorities, they will be the ones actually executing on them, coming up with the mechanics, iterating on the designs, that kind of thing. Now that said, I have ideas, and I'll put them on the table too, but my ideas aren't any more important or given any special treatment compared to another designer's ideas.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I won't be working on it. So if no one wants to work on my idea, then it's not going to go anywhere. So there's a little bit of like getting everyone onto the same team.
That makes sense.
Happens at that point.
Yeah, that's helpful. I heard a rumor that there was a big meeting of the minds happening during the Denver sectional that I was playing in. That you don't have to confirm or deny if that was that meeting, but it seems like a good thing to kind of, align on a direction for the year.
Oh yeah. No, it wasn't that meeting. Because that meeting that you're referring to was us going over the final stages of one of the sets in development, where we were tightening up all the screws and cleaning up all of the corners, because we are right now at the stage where we are about to send it off to the printers.
Awesome.
Or not literally, but in the figurative sense of it's out of our hands.
Yeah.
And so we want it to be as good as ideal as possible.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to that set. In the
Me
meantime,
too. It'll take a while.
yeah. In the meantime, I want to start talking about some cards.
Yeah.
Let's talk about prestige cards and Carbonite packs for a minute. I think I have been pretty impressed by the prestige cards and by Carbonite in general. It seems like it's super fun. Around me, buying those packs is pretty limited. Like you
Mhm.
can only get so many per week, and they're sold out almost everywhere. And the cards, I mean, they look great, right? So I have a tier 2 here.
Nice. Nice.
Are you happy with how those are doing?
Oh yeah. In fact, I'm a little surprised at how quickly and unanimously the uptake has been of the audience. I expected there to be some trepidation about like a $25 booster pack and
Yeah.
about the intentionally limited print run, right? But it turns out people really like special cards.
Yeah.
I am also people. If I had come better prepared, I would have grabbed some of mine to show off too. And they are just helping get more cards that people want into the ecosystem, so that people can have more customization for their cards. People can have cards that they have a special attachment to in a way that like
Mhm.
if my legendary looks like everyone else's legendary, yeah, it's legendary, but it's not special. But like if I have this prestige chimera, then that's going to look different than most other chimeras I'll see, and that's that makes it special, that kind of thing. And also, we did intentionally try to. We only dipped our toe into what's possible with this, but like
Sure.
we did try to dip our toe into like, what if we really leaned into the fact that these are cosmetics and collectibles first, and that's how you end up with horizontal Star Destroyers.
Yeah, that's excellent. I don't think I've even seen those on the table yet, just because not many people are playing Annihilator and Executor in their decks. I am, just not many people.
Yeah.
No, and I haven't seen a serialized yet in person either, but I've seen, footage of them, and it looks pretty special.
I haven't seen one myself either, but I heard one of my coworkers just negotiated a trade of like one serialized card for like this big old stack of cards.
Okay,
I was like, you
that's
know what?
awesome.
Fair.
When you're writing creative briefs, are you specifying, like, do you know in your mind this is a creative brief for a prestige card versus a regular card, or is it the same creative brief for multiple artists?
It's the latter.
Okay.
Sometimes, as you'll see in future sets, we have to modify them in order to fit the like unique concept.
Okay.
But these, all the ones that you see in Jump to Lightspeed, for instance, we just took the original art brief and said, okay, give this to an artist and pay them extra, and also tell them to like frame it in a different way, right? Because
Mhm.
obviously, within their full
Mhm.
art, that's a different window of space that you're filling up, and there are different ways that you have to fit the piece into the frame such that the thing that you want to be the focus is actually there in the center or whatever. Now that said, I did write, is it 4 or 5 new briefs, maybe 4 new briefs for the diptychs and triptychs, because
Ah,
obviously the original arts weren't like that. So instead of saying draw Darth Vader's TIE Advanced going through the trench run, this time it was draw the TIE Advanced pursuing and attacking Luke Skywalker
yeah.
in Red 5. And then it was on the art directors to try to figure out how to make that thing where when you put them together, it's one piece of art. But when you have them separate, it still makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to be like, well, if the two ships are different sizes, this is especially true for like Home One and Red Leader, for instance. Home One and Red Leader, very different size spaceships,
Sure.
but they both kind of need to fill up the same amount of space on a card.
Right.
So
As
they had to
opposed to
figure
a
out how to
little
use
speck.
weird perspectives. Yeah, no. I pitched in a future set. One of my co-designers and I were like, what if we did one where it was a whole 9-page, and we invented this convoluted scene to get them all in, and then we pitched to the art directors, and they were like, these like 4 cards will be completely unreadable at this scale. So we had to change.
That would have been fun, though. I
Yeah.
could have seen it. And just to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about, there are certain prestige cards that like fit together, right? So they belong together and they make one art piece if you put them side by side.
It's called a diptych when there are 2, because there are 2 of them. And then a triptych would be 3. You put 3 cards side by side, and then the whole art piece is one big art piece that we just chopped up.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's talk about another new thing that I absolutely love.
Me too, buddy. The first time I saw these, my jaw just straight dropped. The graphic design team really killed it on this one.
It's amazing. And I happen to have one, so I'm going to show it to the camera a little bit, but this is just incredible. I mean, I call this the world between the worlds frame. I don't know that that's what you guys referred to it as, but like that piece of the card pops out at you a little bit. I mean,
it's foiled, right? Though, isn't the white foiled?
It is. It is. But it's also like, I would call it embossed or something like that. I don't know if that's what you would call it.
Spot gloss.
That's probably the right term for it.
It is a spot glass. Yeah, it's a spot glass treatment. I remember because we were doing R&D on this foiling tech, for lack of this foiling tech, back in my Legend of the Five Rings days, because we were trying to figure out how to make cool LCG promos. Since LCGs don't have collectibles, how can we make since they're not collectible as a game, how can we make cool promos that are worth going to an event for? And then we were like, well, we got all this cool technology we researched like 5 years ago. What if we put it to use?
Yeah, makes total sense to me. They're amazing, and it seems like they're in pretty high demand too. I didn't crunch the numbers, but I think someone told me, I think I heard once, that there's like 9,000 total serialized cards, right? Like total.
Oh, yep.
And in the grand scheme of things, there's fewer Obi-Wans in existence than that, right? And when the regional comes up and there's the Emperor and the Rey, right? There will theoretically only be like 1,000, maybe 2,000 total of those.
And then Mando's at the Galactic Championships, right?
That's right. And I guess the placement one, there's even less, right? So the Kylo is going to like the top 64, I think was announced at the next one. And in Denver, I think it went to, I don't remember who it went to, top 32 or something. I'm fuzzy on that. But yeah, when you think about like the rarity of these cards and how sweet they are, these are pretty collectible, and I'd say job well done. Can you tell us about designing or what the process was to create this version of an OP promo?
These ones, not so much. The actual frame design is done by our graphic design team. For all of my authority as a creative lead, I have almost zero skill at visual arts. So I write words, and then I give the words to somebody else, and I say, turn these words into something pretty. And then they do, and it's great. But this was because we wanted our headliner event promos to be particularly special. And once we came up with this design, we were like, oh, this is really good. Where else can we use it? But specifically, where else can we use it in a way that doesn't overdo it, frankly,
Hmm.
right? Because some amount of what makes cards special is that there is a limited supply of them.
Right.
And so one of the ways that we're intentionally keeping this frame special is by only using it sparingly in the places where we want to really be unique and memorably stand out. We'll get to the galactic frames later.
Right.
And the reason that there is a distinction there is for that reason. We want these to stand out as like you had to go be at the event and there were only so many of them, period, in existence. And it is almost more unique to the event than even the ones that say Galactic Championships on them, because there are so many cards with the Galactic Championships frame that we'll talk about later.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because each player who goes theoretically only gets one Mandalorian, and that person might get 30 of the other cards that come in the packs.
Yeah, and even if it's 30 different cards, I mean, there aren't 30 different cards, but you get the idea. Even if they're mostly different,
right,
you're still going to see that frame a lot more, which will make it less prestigious isn't the word I'm looking for, but less unique.
Yeah, I get you. I do think of it as prestigious. I like that word. I mean,
that's the vibe we're trying to get. I'd rather it be your words than mine.
Yeah, I mean, when people see this card, there are wows uttered.
I hope I get to have one of them at some point.
I imagine we can make that happen. But good job on those. More on the theme of OP cards.
Yeah.
So these were the prizes so far for store championships for sets 1 through 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was interesting that, we started off legendary, went rare, back to legendary. And I'll say we started off with kind of like Mace is a fairly niche card, but like there's some power behind it. Unrefusable offer. I don't know that I've ever seen in a competitive deck. I mean, it's probably been out there. Gore, pretty niche again. And then Devastator is like the most desirable card in set 4.
Good job. We did it. Quick, everyone pack up and go home while you're ahead.
Yeah. Was that on purpose?
No.
No, really?
It wasn't. So one of the challenges for especially Store Showdown and Planetary Qualifier promos is that we select a handful of cards at the beginning of design that we think might be that we think are going to be desirable.
Okay.
Or at least that we want to be desirable. And we create a pool of alternate art cards that we're like, okay, at the end, we're going to have to like allocate all these to stuff.
Okay.
And most of them will be weekly play, and some of them will be Store Showdown and so on. And as you can imagine, sometimes card designs change. No, always card designs change, rarities change. Even aspects and colors and the designs of the cards change, right? So right. There's a lot of hopeful prognostication when we have no idea what any of the cards are going to be, based on the timelines of how long it takes to produce art, and then how long it takes to produce print the actual cards such that they can get to the stores at the right times, et cetera, et cetera. We're often selecting some promos we can select after the set is complete, but a lot of the promos we can't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And also our internal expectations don't always match the public's. We genuinely were expecting Gore to be more of a metagame player than he was.
Okay.
And I, at least, didn't have faith in Devastator, and I was proven very wrong. Other Other people had faith in Devastator, but I didn't.
Okay.
And so we have gotten a lot better since then, or since before the game came out, at understanding what kinds of cards people what cards people are going to value. We now have a lot more resources to have a better sense of which cards are more likely to be actually good than when there were only 3 of us working on the game, right? And so, and also just that we have readjusted the power balance of the game in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
Year 2 is going to just categorically be slightly stronger than, well, at least Shadows of the Galaxy and Twilight of the Republic were. And for that end, I think the promo cards that you're going to see going forward should align more with what players are actually looking for.
But it sounds like that was always the intention all along, was like, let's pick promo cards that people are probably going to have in their decks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why like Takedown in the weekly play, the Spark of Rebellion weekly play promos is kind of emblematic of that to me personally, because around we had more time to select the Spark of Rebellion promos than we did for the 2 following sets.
Okay.
And so even though we didn't know exactly what Takedown was going to do or how good it was going to be, we had a pretty high confidence that because of the metagame that we were seeing internally and the like slot that it was in as the uncommon, designed for Premier constructed removal event,
Right.
it was probably going to have a pretty high chance of being like competitively desirable. And so that was why we prioritized it as one of the promos for I want to say it was Store Showdowns, maybe.
I think it was. Yeah. Because there is a judge version of it.
Yes.
Well, cool. I'm looking forward to getting myself a Devastator or 2 or 4.
Or 2 or 3, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Let's talk about some normal cards for a while.
Yeah, I do that most of my time.
Yeah. That makes sense. So I've got Luke as an example. We can talk about other ones too, but I think you guys have talked about designing characters for a moment in time. Can you walk through that with Luke, or pick your other favorite character?
Yeah. So for we're gonna make a lot of cards because this game is gonna last a long time, and we make a lot of cards every year. And there are certain characters that people like a lot, which means that you're going to see a lot of versions of a lot of characters. In the first 4 sets, we have seen 4 Lukes. Spoiler alert: there's going to be more Lukes. In order to make every Luke feel memorable, in order to make the Lukes more memorable, as well as to make them go in lots of different archetypes, so that aggro players have a chance to play Luke. And control players also have a chance to play Luke if Luke is your favorite character, right? One of the important tools we have, and one of the ideas that we've really leaned into in what this game is the idea that every card is representing a specific character at a specific moment or in a specific context, not just them holistically. And one of the things that enables us to do is put them in lots of colors, because the colors do have attitudes, right? So when I make a Vigilance Luke, that has a different that presents Luke in a different contextualizes Luke in a different way than if I have an Aggression Luke.
Yeah.
If I have an Aggression Luke, people are going to expect him to feel different. People are going to apply certain motivations or values onto the character because of the aspect that we've given them. And so what we can't do is put a character in a color that they don't make sense in. It would be it would be very strange to use an extremely obvious extreme example for there to be a heroic Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But then you can imagine sort of the more of the side characters of what would an aggression Mon Mothma look like? I mean, I bet we're gonna get there now with Andor season 2 happening, right? But like, if you're just if we pretend that Andor hasn't come out yet and it was just episode 6, right? Like, it's gonna be a hard sell sell for aggression Mon Mothma.
Yes, I don't go there.
Yeah, exactly. And so then the question becomes, well, but fundamentally the color pie is a mechanical function of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it exists is to break the cards into a bunch of chunks so that you can't put them all in the same deck. And then we want the chunks to like have different play styles. And so what that means is certain mechanics only go in certain colors. And so if we want a certain mechanic on a certain character, then we need to also be able to thematically justify that character in that aspect. And then is there a version of that character that could be that aspect that we can then put on the card? And sometimes that gets you to really interesting, bizarre places that are like hyper specific, like Snowspeeder Luke. We came up with a card mechanic of it's a pilot, and when the ship dies, they jump out and get on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a character that does that in Star Wars? Yes. Okay. We actively need a Luke unit, and also we don't have any other Luke units for a while. We're due for a Luke unit. Great. This card fits this specific version of Luke. It couldn't be Yavin 4 Luke because at Yavin 4, he doesn't crash his ship and jump out. It couldn't be him from The Mandalorian season 2 or whatever, where he's, cutting up Death Troopers. Not Death Troopers, Dark Troopers.
Yes.
Because he's not piloting a ship then, right? So it has to specifically be this version of Luke from episode 5 where he flies the Snowspeeder. And then the goal then is that we end up with a lot of different versions of characters that all have different mechanics and different play styles, and even though they're all the same person.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that, at least for Luke, right? But I think it holds pretty true that like you can look at the card and know which Luke you're dealing with, right? Aggression Luke being like, okay, he's a hot shot, he's going after the Death Star. Green Luke being the one in the Snowspeeder. It's really fun that the mechanics all fit that moment in time. And
then sometimes you end up in a situation where it doesn't all fit, and you have to try to like figure out the puzzle of how can we justify it. The Luke leader from Spark of Rebellion was that. It was important to us that, for lots of reasons, that he be Vigilance aspect, and that he have this mechanic. And so if he's going to be Vigilance aspect, but importantly for the theme of the 2-player starter, it had to be at Bespin. If I go and think about the Luke Skywalker that duels Darth Vader at Cloud City, the first thing I think of is aggression, because he is acting before thinking.
Yeah,
that is the whole point of his interaction with Yoda, is that he is too bold, he is too brash, he is too quick to act, he's too aggressive. He's actively seeking this fight out, right? So from a certain perspective, Bespin Luke is there because he is an aggression character who is going to go pick a fight. On the other hand, he could be cunning, right? Because he uses all these like tricks and tactics to get himself out of trouble when he is clearly outmatched by Vader. Whether it's blasting him with gas, or jumping out of the carbonite chamber at the last minute, or retreating when he knows he can't beat him in a one-on-one fight. You could make a strong case for a cunning version of Luke, but this one had to be Bespin, and it had to be Vigilance. And so eventually we figured out that, well, if you present it as he's here to protect his friends, that's a vigilance attitude for Luke,
Mm-hmm.
for why he's
Mm-hmm.
there. It also fits, it does fit the theme. And so that's where the subtitle brings it all together. If we had given him a different subtitle, then it would have presented him in a different way that
Sure.
then would have justified a different aspect.
Yeah, I like it. It really brings it all together.
Anyway, these are the things that I think about in my day job.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to the one that's missing here that you mentioned, the Mando season 2 Luke, where he's slicing up dark troopers. That'll be good.
Listen, we got a lot of Lukes to make over the years. It's a when, not an if.
Yeah, I believe it. Okay. Talk to me about character selection in general. This is a nice look at the red pilots from the most recent set, and we've got
Red Heroes specifically.
yeah, and we've got this probably the second best known character in all of Star Wars, Luke, and then we've got Frisk, and we've got everybody in between, and probably I don't know 3% of Star Wars fans know who Frisk is, right? So how do you end up with this type of variety that's trying to please everyone?
Well, it's always interesting to me to watch social media, especially on preview season.
Okay.
When people are trying to speculate, or not trying, when people are speculating about what characters they might see in the set, what characters they want to see in the set, whether a particular card reveal implies the existence of another character being in the set or whatever, right? Because everyone is always obviously biased by their own desires. It is not going to be a surprise, I think, when I say card gamers are naturally inclined to also be video gamers.
Fair.
And especially the ones who are online, right? So you often see video game characters come up a lot in the card gaming space of like, oh, I want to see Cal Kestis. Oh, I want to see Frisk or whatever. But our goal is to cater to as much of the Star Wars fan base as possible. And so I, as a deep lore fan who tries to get characters from novels into my games because that's the kind of person I am, that's all well and good as long as it's done in moderation.
Yeah.
Because for every Frisk that I put, if I make a set full of Frisks, then someone's going to look at that set and be like, I, the casual Star Wars fan, don't recognize Star Wars here. These are all characters I've never heard of. And sometimes I get reminded by that in unexpected places. The Mandalorian season 1 was one of the most important media of Star Wars in the last, 10 years probably. And yet when I took a character who was prominently featured in one episode out of 8, Toro Calican, everyone was like, who the heck is this kid? I've never heard of him before in my life. I'm like, he's holding the baby, the baby in the scene. And so even though and so sometimes even characters that I think are going to be fairly recognizable aren't, because not everyone pays as much attention as I do or whatever. Sure. And so this is a good sort of like microcosm of what kinds of things we're thinking about going into a set. You'll notice that the two most prominent characters are the leaders in this list. You'll notice that you have a thematic linkage between two of the characters in Poe and BB-8. You see another thematic linkage between Luke and Biggs. And then BB-8 is probably one of the most well-known characters from the sequel trilogy. And so that gives you like the majority of the characters who are here are going to be characters that you will hopefully fairly easily recognize from a movie or a prominent TV show. And certain characters get to have a little bit more cachet than others. Asajj Ventress has only ever appeared in animated shows, but she's been around long enough that like most people will know who she is and that she is a Star Wars character,
Sure.
even though she's never been in a live action movie or a TV show. And by the same token, if I put Lieutenant Childson, who is a background character from the very first Star Wars movie from 1977, yeah, he's literally been around longer than everyone else, but most people don't know who he is.
Right.
Although they would recognize his voice if they ever heard it. And so a lot of the character selection for any given set is about trying to balance these competing interests of we want to include novelty, which often involves reaching for less well-known characters, because the more well-known characters we've already done.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we have enough consistent representation of the main characters, which means like, yeah, there's just going to be more Lukes and Vaders. Like, if you think we're ever going to be done doing Lukes and Vaders, you're wrong. And also that the characters present the theme of the set. There's a reason that all 5 of these characters are pilots in the piloting set.
Sure.
There's a reason that Biggs wasn't in Spark of Rebellion. And there's a reason that and conversely, Jump to Lightspeed being a ships and pilots set means it is easier for us to fit in characters who aren't as well known but are cool pilots.
Yes.
We can't just put Biggs in any set. I mean, we could, but it's going to be easier to put him in a set where he naturally fits into the themes of the set.
Yeah, this is where he belongs.
Exactly. And so sometimes having set themes that address corners of the franchise that we haven't touched in a while can be an active advantage of, hey, we haven't seen our cool pilots in a while. What if we did a set that allowed us to put pilots in it so that we could put those characters in the game again? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts. One is I really appreciate the unique Star Wars characters that like most people don't know. Even going back like to the old Decipher game, which I barely played, but I collected because I was pretty young when that game was coming out. But I had all the cards, and so like I knew everybody's name in the movie, like everybody, and I've been missing that for a while, and I love that, like, you know, if my kid asked me like, who's that, Daddy? I'd be like, oh, that's Bazine Natal. You know, like I would not have known that without
the card game,
without this. Yes. And I love that depth that it takes me to.
And that's something that I love about the specific synergy between making a card game and having a beloved franchise that it's attached to, is that they work synergistically. Obviously, the Star Wars fan who doesn't play TCGs will then consider playing a TCG and maybe learn and then become a TCG player because of the Star Wars. And it goes the other way of like, if my friend who's a TCG player but is only casually interested in Star Wars starts playing a lot and is like, man, this Toro Calican character keeps winning all my games for me. I wonder what his story is.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, he's watching The Mandalorian, you know?
I like it. My other thought that you prompted me on was I have that love for the unique characters, right? So when I saw Legends of the Force, I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. But also it's the 5th set. There's no way that the 5th set can be full of like these really obscure characters and even like hinting at like Legends, you know, like in my mind, it's like, okay, this is Darth Revan and Mara Jade and Crate and Talon and you know, I'm like, it's the 5th set. It can't be that. Maybe we'll get, you know, Grandmaster Yoda or something like that. But
don't worry, we put Yoda on the cover just to make sure you really knew.
That's right. Cool. Talk to me about cards that go into sets where they seem a little out of place. So, you know, Jyn Erso being in the set that's mostly not Rebellion stuff. It's mostly clones and droids. and Ahsoka and Gideon being in the mostly pilot set. How do these cards sneak in?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this with Spark of Rebellion, and specifically of like, and especially this came up a lot when we were integrating Shadows of the Galaxy in, because we knew we were going to have these three big tentpole themes that hit the foundations of the franchise throughout the year. We were going to do the original trilogy and the Galactic Civil War in the first set. We were going to do the Mandalorian era, and by extension, reach out into the scum and villainy underworld of the franchise in Shadows of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were going to do the Clone Wars in the third set. You'll notice what isn't appearing in any of those themes is Kylo Ren or Rey. And we can't go a year without Kylo Ren and Rey.
Makes sense.
They are the faces of the sequel trilogy. And regardless of how you personally feel about the merits of the sequel trilogy, for a lot of people, and especially a lot of kids, Star Wars is a franchise about Rey and Kylo more than it is a franchise about Luke and Vader.
Sure.
So where is Kylo and Rey in our first year? And one of the things we landed on was sometimes there are going to be needs. Sometimes there are going to be needs for specific cards that do not fit in a set, like this Kylo and Rey dilemma.
Sure.
Maybe it's a matter of, hey, the themes just don't align with this specific character, and it's been over a year since we saw a Luke Skywalker card, and that is, first of all, weird that happened, but second of all, we should fix it.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, I have this really cool idea that has to be on a really cool card design that has to go on this specific character because it's like a top-down design, or maybe it's a bottom-up design, but there just isn't another character that fits it. Like, I had many people came to me when Spark of Rebellion came out and said, this General Krell is the most perfect theme you could have possibly picked for this card.
Sure.
Because he is intentionally sacrificing all of his troops to get resources.
Right.
And if we had put any other character on the card, it would have fallen flat. But instead, it felt like a thematic victory, even though the card was designed bottom up. And so we were like, okay, if we're going to keep having these needs, what can we do about that? And so we decided to intentionally make a statement in the first set, which we've more or less carried through in all the sets, of like, there's going to be about 10 characters. Maybe sometimes it'll be 8. Maybe sometimes it'll be 13. But like vaguely in the 10-ish space of characters that do not fit the theme, and that is A, okay, and B, actively cool. There, like Chewbacca was an example at one point of, hey, it's really Chewbacca's a main character, and he often gets left unrepresented. I remember when Star Wars Destiny came out, he wasn't in the first set, and that was like a big deal.
Okay.
And we were like, hey, it would be
didn't
nice
get a medal kind of thing.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get a medal.
it would be nice if we could leave ourselves the door of, hey, this set just randomly has a Chewbacca because it's cool. And that's turned out to work to our developmental advantage a number of times, where it's like, hey, this card just fundamentally isn't working in the set. We need to kill the whole design and replace it with literally anything else. And we have a pool of art that we hold back of in case of emergency. We call it our slush pool.
Okay.
Basically, we overcommission art, and then not all of it goes into the set, and the rest goes into the slush pool. And so there's a character in a future set that is not terribly thematic for the set, but we just had this hole, and we were like, we need a character here, and it specifically needs to be a unique unit. Okay, what unique units do we even have access to?
Mm-hmm.
Who do we have art of just lying around that we can put on this card and then put their name on it? And the character didn't fit the theme of the set, but it fit the mechanic great.
Yeah.
So congratulations, that character bailed us out for that set. And sometimes it's a matter of Jyn Erso is in Twilight of the Republic specifically because she didn't get a unit in Spark of Rebellion, and I wanted her to have a unit in year one because like she deserves one, you know. And so these off-theme characters are generally speaking selected because they are characters who we think they're important enough that we want to make sure they keep getting new cards, and or it's so perfect for the card design that it literally can't be anyone else. And we always try to have some of those just for variety.
I like it. And you know, it might be odd too. It might not be the average person, but you might have someone who just, you know, doesn't really like ships or something, right? Like
No,
they
that's
don't like
exactly
the underworld,
it,
but they can still get the Kylo Ren and the Rey because they're into Force a little bit more.
That was a big part of it too. Is like we were like, okay, and then for the non-ship fans, here's your Ahsoka.
Yeah, I like it. I think you put a lot of work into subtitles, right? I think that's like a little game for you almost.
You have no ideas. Writing subtitles is one of my favorite parts of my job, and I'm about to lose it because I don't have time anymore.
Oh, really? You have to hand that off?
Yeah, I'm training in the rest of the team so that they can start writing the subtitles so that they can have so they can do most of it and then I can finesse the edges rather than me doing all of it. But it is one of my favorite parts of the job.
I get you. Well, I'm sure that you will enjoy the finessing days. Do you have the subtitles in mind for these when you're writing the art brief? Like Lando with impeccable taste, like that just feels like it went together.
So not usually. If I were planning ahead better, then I would say totally. And every once in a while, we come up with a concept that is so specific and top down that it demands a specific subtitle. There's a handful of cards in future sets that the designer wrote the subtitle into the card file on day one, and no one touched it or thought it or challenged it at any point. Because it was so obvious that they had designed the whole card around that subtitle. But most of the time, we just put placeholder ones in. And then at the very end, we come and we look at the final card mechanic and the final art, and then we go back to the source material and we synthesize them all together. The Lando leader from Jump to Lightspeed is a perfect example of that. He went through lots of design changes. There were points at which he was doing fundamentally different things than what he's doing now. But once we saw what the final mechanic was, then it was clear that the thing that he was doing in this set was the concept of him buying time for Han so that Han could defeat the shield generator and therefore open up the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
And so we needed to lean into that specific aspect of what Lando is doing and why he's doing it to bring the mechanics and the theme together. And sometimes you see an art piece like Shadows of the Galaxy, and you're like, impeccable taste. My God, you know what's up. I wrote the subtitle for that card in reaction to the art piece.
That's fun. That's fun. I pulled up one more example of Tarkin, and I didn't even realize when I was pulling this at first that the new set for Tarkin is actually Republic, not Imperial. And I thought, I guess. I mean, technically in the movie when we see him, I think the Empire has been formed, but I guess he would have been a Republic officer off screen before he was an Imperial officer. Right?
We see him on screen. There's actually an arc in the Clone Wars where Captain Tarkin, a captain of the Republic Navy, works alongside Anakin Skywalker, and they have some like pretty good heart-to-hearts, and you're like, these two get along awfully well.
Okay. I need to go back and watch that episode.
But you'll notice the names are different. You'll notice that Captain Tarkin is a captain and Grand Moff Tarkin is a Grand Moff, and those are mechanically different titles. We do this sometimes because recognizability is so important to this game as a Star Wars game. There have been previous games where this card would have been named Wilhuff Tarkin. And honestly, fewer people will recognize the name Wilhuff Tarkin than Grand Moff Tarkin, because casually and in source materials and stuff, most things refer to him as Grand Moff Tarkin, or like Jabba the Hutt, right? Sure. The Hutt is not part of his name, but like imagine saying anything other than Jabba the Hutt and it's weird.
Yeah, I would be surprised if you came out with a Sheev Palpatine card.
There was a period of time during design and development where that was his name.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things that we experimented with in Jump to Lightspeed specifically, going back to Lando. So you'll notice that here it's very clear, in Tarkin's case, it's very clear he's a captain on this card. He's a Grand Moff in this card. In both cases, he's Tarkin. At no point is anyone ever confused as to who he is. Following the same logic, when we were working on Jump to Lightspeed, we had Lando in the set, but his name wasn't Lando because his name was General Calrissian. Because by then he had received a rank, and so I was like, oh, he deserves his rank. And specifically in the film, he is never referred to by the name Lando. In Return of the Jedi film, they only refer to him as General Calrissian.
Okay.
I was like, if this is Return of the Jedi or Return of the Jedi version, then we should use the Return of the Jedi name. And so he was General Calrissian. And guess what? Nobody knew who he was because we didn't have art yet. And so almost none of our playtesters who were casual Star Wars fans, obviously the diehard ones, no, Lando is Lando, they saw General Calrissian and they did not recognize that this card represented Lando. They would have gotten there when the art was there eventually. But I found that really interesting because it meant that I couldn't just always rely on the specifics of the source material. And B, somehow there was a difference between Lando Calrissian and General Calrissian, and Grand Moff Tarkin and Captain Tarkin. And there was something to drill down there of, well, if there is a difference, if people will naturally understand that Princess Leia and Leia Organa are the same person, people will naturally understand that Ben Kenobi and Obi-Wan Kenobi are the same person. People will naturally understand that Grand Moff Tarkin and Captain Tarkin are the same person. But I give you Lando Calrissian and General Calrissian, and no one recognizes that they're the same person. Something's up. What's the something? And the answer that we figured out was that there is one name that everyone knows. And it's not always the first name, and it's not always the last name. When you think of Lando, the first word you type into a search engine is Lando, not Calrissian.
Right.
The first word you type in for Obi-Wan is Kenobi, not Obi-Wan. The first one you do for Leia is Leia, and Luke and Vader, and so on and so on and so on. And so we figured out that, like, okay, we can adjust titles within reason, but we have to know which name is more important for the character in order for people to be able to identify them. Because it is important that, like, if someone's going to go in a search engine and they're going to type in the character's most well-known name, it should hit every version of that character, even if that character's name changes throughout their life, or the card titles change because they have ranks in them, that kind of thing.
That makes sense. I might have another example of that coming up. I actually do. I had this in here for a different reason, but it could be interesting to talk about both. The question I had in mind here is, these are all pictures of the Falcon.
Yep.
Is there a specific reason why one art piece was the unique ship and the other two were events just, using that ship? But it also harkens back to, like, I don't know how many people know that Gold Leader is the Millennium Falcon. Is there a intentionality, and was there any sort of, like, in-game play aspect that you wanted Gold Leader to be different than the Millennium Falcon?
Yes. One of them was set cohesion. It was extremely important that we have a Millennium Falcon card in the Spotlight deck to go with Han. And it was also very important that we have a Millennium Falcon card in the set to go with Lando.
Okay.
But as a general rule, we don't want two different units in the set to have the same name. Because if I say Spark of Rebellion, if I say Jump to Lightspeed Millennium Falcon, I want you to know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It is not a hard and fast rule, but it is a generally advisable rule. It is a priority.
I like it.
Additionally, the way that we identify space units, and especially starfighters in this game, is with their call signs, and call signs aren't consistent. There is a red leader at Yavin 4, and there is a red leader at Endor, and they are two different ships flown by different people, but they have the same call sign, because call signs are on a mission by mission basis, not on a ship by ship basis. And so during the Battle of Endor, it literally has the call sign gold leader. And I was like, it'd be cool if we acknowledge that, if we utilize that. Because also it means that when we have a gold leader that's the Falcon and a gold leader that's I think it's Horton Salm flying a Y-wing.
It's definitely a Y-wing. I don't know his name.
Yeah, well, we'll see if my memory is correct here. The internet will correct me if I'm wrong. And it's cool that you can see them in these different contexts and be able to know immediately which battle they're at and why they're named that. Right? Because for that reason. So it started with, we can't have two Millennium Falcons in the set. And then it became, but this is actually cool that we're highlighting the fact that the ship names are the call signs, because call signs change. The ship is not always Gold Leader. The ship is not always Red 5 either. As an example. As to your other question, the answer is there isn't. The answer is the reason that some of these ships are events and some of these art pieces are events and some of these art pieces are units is because we needed events and we needed units. This art piece of They Hate That Ship could absolutely go on. Could in an alternate universe could have ended up on a card titled Millennium Falcon with the resistance trait, for instance. And maybe it would probably be cunning, is my guess, given the art, because it's doing a distraction.
Sure.
Some of that is just because if I tell the artist to draw the Millennium Falcon in a space battle, and then I say, put that space battle above the trench above the Death Star trench, either way, I'm still getting an art piece of the Millennium Falcon in a space battle. And so it can be, and sometimes that ambiguity is advantageous to us. For instance, there's an upgrade in a future set that is using art that was commissioned for a unit, and then we slushed it and we said we'll use this art piece later. And then we came to this upgrade and we're like, we really need an art piece for this upgrade. And I'm like, well, I got this picture of a dude that could go in an upgrade, right? Okay, slap it on the card. We're going.
Awesome.
That said, and this is more relevant maybe to non-space units or non-space things, but generally speaking, events work better as scenes. And units work better as portraits. So we especially in Jump to Lightspeed, we wanted to not have just a bunch of spaceships on empty starfields. So we gave them more interesting things to do. But if I just say draw a bounty hunter in a forest, that's enough.
Yeah.
But if I say draw a bounty hunter in a forest and they are they're taking in a bounty and they have a buddy who's doing a lookout behind them, now I've created a whole scene and we're not really just about the one character anymore. Now we're about the character and their relationship to the lookout and their relationship to the target, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk about showcases, but it's maybe a similar question as to the other one. Like if you had told me, the art that I chose for Gold Leader for Millennium Falcon versus an event, or the art that I chose for the showcase, just like spoke to me more than the one in the event or in the standard frame, I would have bought that. But I'm curious, is there like a go-to method for how you say, this one's the showcase and this one is the standard leader?
In a word, no.
Okay.
In more words, if you'll notice, it's kind of obvious. The frames are very different. So there are lots of factors that go into why an art piece ends up on a showcase versus not. And a lot of it has to do with which one is going to pop better in the more customized showcase frame, and which one is going to fit the confines of a regular frame better. Because the regular frame, by design, has no modularity and no wiggle room. It is designed to be consistent and infinitely replicatable. The showcase frames, on the other hand, are by design intended to be built around the features of the art piece. So like the mall piece, for instance, doesn't fit very nicely in the much more vertical frame, because the vertical frame's like this. If I applied this to that mall, we're losing his whole lightsaber and probably part of his arm. The Ray piece is similar, although it's a little bit closer because at least they're both doing one of these. Pre-Vizsla, you can do something interesting with his head, right? Because the art on the regular card, he's all hunched, but in the showcase, his head is higher, and you can actually put that above the frame in an interesting way. And so the more we can, and Palpatine's like that a lot too with his throne. So generally speaking, because we want the showcase cards to feel special, we try to pick the art pieces that we think are going to synergize with a customized frame where we can really highlight the uniqueness of the art and also the uniqueness of the frame in a way where they're both supporting each other instead of a way where they might get in each other's way.
I like it. Do you have a favorite showcase?
I had to be dragged away kicking and screaming from Spark of Rebellion, Cassian Andor. I have a Rebel deck, and I just took him out of the leader slot and put Leia back in because I realized that there was just no world in which he was like, Leia's just better for the deck.
Okay.
Fundamentally. But oh my goodness, that art, that showcase Cassian is so good.
Yeah. And may be getting even more popular now, with Andor coming back out.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about stuff we haven't had a chance to get our hands on yet. I'm calling this the Galactic frame because I think that's the first time we're seeing it.
It sure is.
Talk to me about this one. Why did you move this direction? What do you like about it?
The purpose of this frame was, again, to be special, but special in a way that was different than the placement prizes. Because we didn't want to step on the toes of the placement prizes. And also, those.
Yeah.
And also, we intentionally commissioned art that was more art forward and less frame forward. Because while we hadn't sorted out at the time exactly what the frame was going to be, we wanted the highlight of the promo to be the art and not the frame. Because obviously the World Between Worlds frame is very frame forward.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And it looks very good. And these also look very good, but for very different reasons. And so this frame was in the same way. So by that same sort of, you might extrapolate then that these frames were designed to be special and unique and cool and exciting, but in a way that highlighted the art first and foremost. And some of that you'll see with like the Executor, where the shadow is cast over the text box.
Yeah.
Which is just one of the coolest things to me personally.
That's awesome.
Or you might see like on Snoke, the text box intentionally lets you see enough through it that you can see that the art piece goes all the way down to the bottom of the card.
Mm-hmm.
And so these were intentionally designed to say, we made really, really, really good pieces of Star Wars art, and we want you to admire them. While also being constructed in a way that we could reuse, and also at the same, in addition to being reusable, also gave us room to identify the event that you got the promo at. Because one of the big things about promos is that we want people to then take them home and show up and have them as concrete memories of how they got them, where they got them from. And so it's very important to us then that these frames have the little Galactic Championship logo on them.
And that's what's kind of in the top center of the, like just above the title.
Yep.
Yeah.
Conceivably, we could put a different logo there if we want. But in the meantime, the frame is going to get out of the way of the art. That's the logic.
And it seems like, harkening back to an earlier topic, it seems like most of these are pretty desirable cards that could go in decks, quite a few of them.
Yeah, so generally speaking, just because of the difference in production schedules, we are able to be more, not perfectly, obviously. There are a bunch of promos that we haven't shown off yet because we haven't even shown off the original cards yet.
Right.
So obviously we don't know if those cards are going to be like A+ desirability cards because you don't even know what they are yet, let alone whether or not you want them. However, at this point, we have a pretty good guess. And also, because of the specifics of timelines for the higher tier events, we have a little bit more ability to make promo decisions based on the final versions of cards rather than what I was talking about earlier with the weekly play kits.
Yeah.
Where we kind of have to like pick a pool of cards and then and then sort of consolidate it into something that we think people will want. For these high level events, whether it's sectors, regionals, galactics, we have much more capacity to see what the final card is and then be like, okay, well, this card turned out to be really good. We should probably make a promo of it.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, we put a promo. Now that said, a lot of promos, lots of events. There is some amount of there is a lot of diminishing returns if we reuse the same cards as promos a lot. Yeah, Devastator is really desirable, but if I give you four different Devastators and one of them's in Store Showdown and one of them's in the Galactic Prize Kit and one of them is a placement card in sectors or whatever, like that is going to make each of those promos less desirable because there are more of them that you can get, and also the third Devastator is less interesting than the first Poe Dameron or whatever.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there is some amount of weighing of, yeah, we know this card's going to be desirable, but we only get to use it once as a promo. Yeah. So is it going to be at Galactics? Is it going to be in sectors of next year or what?
Yeah, I think there's some wisdom to that. And I like that you picked, Darth Vader as the placement prize for Galactics.
Oh, he's the headliner of the whole shebang, my guy.
Yeah.
And as someone who traded his only Vader and it was a hyperfoil away, I hope I can get some. Because I would sure like to own some Vaders, and it would be cool if they were special.
That's brutal. While we're on the topic of the Galactic Championships, is there anything looking forward that you want to share that you're super excited about that we're allowed to talk about right now? It's okay if it doesn't come to mind, but
I mean, I'm certainly excited I cannot say enough how excited I am for Galactic Championships. We haven't even announced all the stuff we're getting up to for that event. in addition to just the opportunity that I'm going to get to be there and hang out with people all week. But also there are side events we haven't shown off yet. There are promos we haven't shown off yet.
Yeah.
I personally am extremely excited to discover with the rest of the world, which decks and which players get to fight through the Swiss into the top cut, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm an absolute sucker for a fight to the success storyline. And so that event just on its own, and it's in Vegas.
Yes.
Just that event on its own is already enough for me personally.
Awesome.
But also, I can't talk about Secrets of Power yet, and I know I say this every time, which is Secrets of Power was I wrote the vision for it from the bottom up and led it all the way through. And so that was my one opportunity to put myself into the game in a certain way, which will make sense when we talk about it. So in November, Secrets of Power comes out, and the set's going to be great, and I can't wait.
Awesome.
And in the meantime, it's a secret. And yes, that is funny to me endlessly.
Yeah. Secrets of Power is a secret.
In the meantime, previews for Legends of the Force start extremely soon.
Yeah.
And I think personally, Legends of the Force is going to be the most exciting thing in all of year 2 for the general public. We have, not only are the cards cool, the characters are cool, the mechanics are cool, the prestige cards are cool.
I can't wait for those.
Because we have definitely, we started with the most straightforward thing we could do with prestige, and we have only gotten weirder and cooler and wackier from here.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
I like it. Cool. I'm going to give you just a few kind of rapid fire questions that I'm personally interested in.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll let you go because I've taken up quite a bit of your time. You have a few cards, Rallying Cries 1, Chaos of War is another, with these like epic scenes with Mandalorians in them. I'm just curious, like, did you have a lot of extra Mandalorian scenes and you thought, boy, these are awesome, we need to put these on cards? Or like, did you have Rallying Cry in your mind when you wrote the creative brief for this one?
No, so a lot of the cards in Spark of Rebellion especially started out as did not have themes for quite some time.
Okay.
Because we were still figuring out the mechanics. And then once we started filling out the set, I just went through and said, what is a top down? This card ability says all my dudes are better this turn. Okay. What does that evoke in me? That sounds like we're doing a charge. Okay. If we're doing a charge, what's the first charge I think of in Star Wars? Okay. It's these guys from Rebels. Great. Love it. We're in. It's funny that you should say that, because then separately down the line, when we did the Chaos of War, that was for most of design and development called the Siege of Mandalore. Because I really wanted a card called the Siege of Mandalore. And so we made a whole card around the Siege of Mandalore. And then at the end, we were like, this isn't epic enough. We can do better. We're going to save the card title for another card later. And we'll retitle this to something that's a little bit more generic, because the card mechanic didn't end up at the like A+ tier that it started at when it had that name. And so we'll save the name for an A+ mechanic.
I get you.
It is very funny to me that they ended up visually so similar.
Yeah, cool. So Shock T, this is a little bit of a deep cut, but we've had a few of those already,
and we'll have many more.
I would have found it hilarious if Shock T's ability was when defeated, create a clone trooper token, because she, gets killed like 3 different times in the Star Wars universe. Do you know if that ever came up, or are people not trying to sneak as many jokes in as I would?
Oh no, people are sneaking as many jokes in as you would. Don't worry, there are so many jokes coming. In that same vein, I for a while for a decent chunk of design of Spark of Rebellion, I was campaigning for and actively designing versions of the Grand Inquisitor leader, who was a much lower deploy and had a when defeated ability, because he's the villain of the first season. So he comes out at the beginning and then he dies.
I like it.
Obviously that didn't pan out, and I will one day get my cheap deploy Grand Inquisitor with a when defeated ability, because man, I'm gonna make it happen. But no, Shock T was I designed 2 mirrored cards, and they were very intentionally mirrored. In the droid guy says, when played, make droids, and then when attack, make droids better. And then the heroic version was, when played, make dudes better, and on attack, make dudes. So they both had the same mechanics, but they were switched when they happened.
I get you.
And that mirroring was very intentional and desirable. And then once we came to the card, I was like, okay, who's going to be training the clones? Well, it's obviously the character that trains the clones in the lore.
Okay, I can see that too. Maybe there's a different moment in time where Shock T will get when defeated.
I mean, there are 3 moments in time when she gets defeated, really. So
take your pick.
Likely.
That's funny. How did McClunky get named? Like, I would have picked a different name for this mechanic, but it's just fun.
Danny and I really like memes, and so we were like, wouldn't it be funny if this was McClunky? And nobody stopped us.
Amazing.
My personal victory to that end was that we put it on such a powerful card. Because like it is important to me personally, and obviously this is an unattainable goal, but I personally find a great deal of satisfaction when the most memorable card title, the most memorable Star Wars quotes are on the cards that people play a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So like the obvious example, and this will mean a lot to you, is, hey, remember "May the Force be with you"?
I absolutely do.
The most famous Star Wars quote that was also on the one objective in the LCG that defined the whole game.
Yep.
From when it came out until literally the end.
Everybody was playing it.
Yeah. And so like if I notice that a card is getting played a lot in playtesting and it's unlikely to change, I will go out of my way to try to get a quote onto that card.
That's fun.
So McClunky was that. I'm Your Father was that.
Mm-hmm.
Hello There was that, although Hello There didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to be, but like it was supposed to be a tier removal, and it just was like one number off somewhere.
Yeah, because Hello There is this phase, right? It has to enter and play this phase.
Well, the secret is that it used to do more harm to the unit that just entered play.
Okay.
But then it was like it kept overperforming, and then we would nerf it, and then I guess it just got one too many nerfs at the last minute.
Yeah, I think that's what holds it back for me personally. But that's cool, and it's kind of the exact opposite, I think, of this last card that I put in here, which in my mind is like the most random art for the most random title for a kind of random effect. So I was wondering how this one came together. There's probably a deck that uses Fight Fire with Fire to like pump up their Grit Wookiees or something, which is probably great, but I haven't played against it yet.
No, this card was purely designed for the draft environment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Man, we really need ways to deal with ships, but I don't have time to attack. How am I going to deal with it? In the same vein that we try to put iconic scenes on cards like McClunky, yes, I will call McClunky iconic, and no, you can't stop me. Sometimes we also let ourselves play in the sandbox. And so I don't, especially with the oversight that my role as creative lead allows, I can have some like specific, I can more effectively do the balancing act of this set gets a little bit more invention budget because XYZ, or okay, we've hit this limit, and now we need to make sure these next handful of cards are all like iconic moments from a Star Wars or whatever. But there is some amount of joy both from the designer end, but also from the player end with respect to variety. This scene is wholly invented. This is not a reference to anything. It is, the art brief is a Trandoshan is in a firefight in a hallway with some unseen opponents or whatever. And then we like make sure the Trandoshan looks like they would fit in Star Wars. And then you can kind of imagine as if you were playing a role-playing game. We did this, in fact, we did this more often when we were producing role-playing game books because then the art piece would go in the role-playing game book. Where you would
that makes sense.
And some of that is really fun because it lets Star Wars feel like it is bigger than just the films. And to that end, it means that there is more variety for players. And most people aren't thinking about things in a structural, systematic way the way I am, of like, I am acutely aware that I need to make sure if I'm going to make 20 Lukes that they are all different, because if I start doing the same Luke again, then even though people do want that Luke, you start to lose steam somewhere.
Yeah.
And people aren't aware of it because it's not a conscious thing they're doing. It's a subconscious thing of, I'm just less excited about I'm just categorically less excited about the fourth event that is Leia putting the thing in R2-D2 when she's saying, "You're my only hope." If I depict that scene on 4 different events, the fourth one is just going to be less exciting because we've already seen it 3 times.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways, however, we will do that because scenes are iconic and we don't print cards indefinitely. So if we haven't printed Leia doing "You're my only hope" for 10 years, then let's do another one or whatever. And the way that we pad it out is we sort of meter out the like, okay, Force Choke is going to be this. And then 4 years later, we'll do Force Grip or something. And then 6 years later, and then 3 years later, we'll do, I don't know,
Force
something
Crush
about aspirations or whatever. And then we could very easily do those in back-to-back, or, year 1, year 3, year 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
But if instead we theme it as like some random Jedi is doing a thing that you've never seen before, that lets us save the repeats longer, and then they don't feel like repeats as much.
I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's pretty much all I had prepared to talk about today. You are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I've been super hyped for this game for a good long while, and as each set comes out, I only get more hyped.
That's my goal.
And I enjoy the game more.
Yeah, our team has been growing, and it has been extremely evident on our end. Every set we produce, I am more excited about than the last, and I'm surprised that we're able to keep doing that.
That's awesome.
And also, as you can tell, I have a lot of fun.
Yes, and I think that's appreciated. I recognize it for sure, and I think you're frequently on stream and stuff like that, and I think people recognize how much fun and that you know the actual name of Gold Leader. that makes you one of us.
I was gonna say, oh yeah, there's a handful of people that like that. Assuming I got it right, which I think I did, are fist pumping right now.
That's right. Well, it's been awesome having you, Tyler. And if we don't talk before then, I'm going to see you in like 3 months in Vegas.
Heck yeah, let's go.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah,
thanks for coming on, man.
In the meantime, I got a lot of art to wrangle.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me on. This is fun.
This was awesome. Take care.